When Eugenia, a loving mother, noticed that her 2-year-old daughter was beginning to emit a foul odor, panic took hold of her. She knew something was wrong, but she never imagined what she was about to discover. Desperate, she took her to the doctor, hoping for a reasonable explanation. However, when the initial diagnosis came, disbelief washed over her. She couldn't believe that this was really happening. Eugenia Bodarenko, a 31-year-old mother, was celebrating her youngest daughter Elisa's second birthday with enthusiasm. The party, full of laughter and games, went as planned. Friends, neighbors, and their kids filled the house with joy, while Eugenia, proud and happy, oversaw every detail to make the day unforgettable. However, after the last guests said goodbye and the noise faded away, something unusual happened. Elisa, usually a calm girl, began to show signs of discomfort. When Eugenia took her to her bedroom and closed the door, she noticed a strange smell in the air. It was a strong and unpleasant scent, something that hadn't been there before. You see, for Eugenia, her little daughter was her greatest treasure. She had met her husband, Edward, when they were both just 19, through the internet. Born and raised in Ukraine, Eugenia found in Edward, a man from the UK, the love and support she had always desired. After a short but intense relationship, Edward traveled to Ukraine to meet her in person. Their connection was so strong that they quickly got married, and she moved to the UK with him to start a new life. Edward, always attentive, supported her at all times, helping her adjust to the new country and learn the language, to strengthen their communication while he worked. However, after 4 years of marriage, they decided to take the next step. Having a home and a good job, it was time to bring a child into the world. But something was wrong. The baby wasn't coming. They went to the hospital, where, unfortunately, a doctor told the woman that it would be unlikely for her to give birth, as her uterus was smaller than normal, making it difficult for her to conceive. For the couple, it was devastating news, but they would do everything possible to overcome this obstacle. They decided to explore options like fertility treatments. After several failed attempts and moments of despair, the baby unfortunately didn't arrive. Edward then decided not to force something that would never happen, so he asked his wife to be strong and assured her that he would be with her. He also suggested that adoption might be an option. However, when Eugenia was 28, something started to change. She had always been an active woman, full of energy and enthusiasm, but suddenly she started feeling an unusual tiredness that she couldn't explain. There were days when simply getting out of bed was a huge effort. Also, the constant dizziness and discomfort she experienced made her think that she might be sick. Worried about her health, Eugenia decided to see a doctor to understand what was happening. After a series of tests, the results showed nothing concerning. However, the symptoms persisted. Dizziness, nausea, and unexplained exhaustion accompanied her daily, but doctors couldn't find the cause. One afternoon, while talking to a close friend, Eugenia mentioned her symptoms. Her friend then suggested taking a pregnancy test, although Eugenia dismissed it immediately. It's impossible, she thought. Still, something in her friend's tone convinced her to give it a try. That same night, without telling Edward, she took a test at home. What she never imagined was that small strip of paper would change their lives forever. With trembling hands, she saw the result come back positive. Eugenia couldn't contain her excitement. Through tears of disbelief and joy, she knew that life was giving them a second chance. She anxiously awaited Edward's return from work to share the incredible news. When he finally arrived, Eugenia greeted him with the test in hand and a smile. At first, Edward didn't understand, but when reality hit him, the joy they both felt was indescribable. After so many years of waiting and doubts, the miracle they had longed for had happened. When they went to the doctor to confirm the pregnancy, even he was surprised. "It's a true miracle," said the specialist, who explained that although the risks were high due to Eugenia's previous conditions, everything seemed to be progressing well. He prescribed extreme care for the following months. Edward made sure Eugenia followed every recommendation to the letter. They modified their routines, eliminated any unnecessary stress, and worked together to ensure the pregnancy went smoothly. Regular checkups and ultrasounds confirmed that the little one developing in Eugenia's womb was healthy. Every heartbeat of their daughter was a reminder of the miracle they were experiencing. Finally, in early 2015, Eugenia gave birth to their little Elisa. It was a moment full of emotions. Edward was by her side throughout the birth, holding his wife's hand and encouraging her. When they heard their daughter's first cry, they couldn't help but cry with joy. When Edward held the baby in his arms for the first time, he felt that everything made sense. Nothing in the world could compare to that feeling. Eugenia, though exhausted, couldn't stop looking at her daughter with love and gratitude. It was the gift they had waited for years. From that day on, Eugenia and Edward's life revolved entirely around Elisa. They took care of her with care and dedication, always attentive to every detail. They wanted to ensure she had a childhood full of love and happiness and were determined to protect her from any danger. However, this also made them very cautious. If Elisa showed the slightest sign of being unwell, her parents went on high alert. They took care of her so much that sometimes it seemed like they were exaggerating, but for them, it was simply their way of showing how much they loved her. One day, when Elisa turned 2, something happened that filled Eugenia with concern. After celebrating her birthday with a nice party at home, the girl began to complain about something strange. She was holding her head, and Elisa began to smell something strange in her bedroom. Although at first Eugenia didn't think much of it, she soon noticed that the odor wasn't going away and that Elisa seemed uncomfortable. The woman then carefully cleaned her, thinking that maybe she had gotten dirty with something. However, after multiple baths, the smell persisted, and Elisa continued to show discomfort. This time, they noticed that the girl started sneezing and having excessive congestion. Eugenia couldn't ignore her mother's instinct. She knew something was wrong, and along with Edward, they decided to act immediately. Residing in the district of Kensington, London, the couple took their little one to the nearest children's hospital for an evaluation. Upon arrival, they explained to the doctors what it was happening. An unpleasant odor seemed to be coming from their daughter as if something was decomposing, but they couldn't identify the cause. The doctor on duty, accustomed to complex cases, performed a full physical examination. Although they initially found nothing alarming, he thought it might be a simple irritation or a minor infection. The local media reported so, and he prescribed a nasal spray and other antibiotics for the little girl. However, the nights became endless for Eugenia and Edward. Elisa kept complaining, even though she took her medicines, and every time she sneezed, small traces of green and even red fluid stained the tissues they used to clean her. The smell in her room had become unbearable, permeating the bedding and the air, as if something invisible was rotting nearby. Eugenia spent hours kneeling by her daughter, trying to comfort her while examining her small face with desperation. "There has to be something we are not seeing," she said, her heart heavy. Edward, though trying to stay strong, could barely hide his concern. "What if it's something serious, something we have overlooked?" he asked at one point. His fear grew with each passing day until they decided they couldn't wait any longer. With Elisa in their arms and uncertainty about to break them, they returned to the hospital, begging for answers. On this second visit, other doctors conducted a thorough evaluation but found nothing out of the ordinary. According to the tests, everything seemed to be in order. However, Eugenia, desperate for an answer, insisted they examine thoroughly, especially the inside of her daughter's nose. Initially, the doctors assured her it was not necessary, but the woman insisted. It was then that the doctors noticed something strange. Upon closer examination, they were shocked by what they saw. They detected something very unusual, deeply lodged in one of Elisa's nasal passages. The surprise was general. Carefully, the doctor used tweezers to remove it. Slowly, they extracted the object, which turned out to be a simple and small sponge, Eugenia explained. The last piece removed was a larger chunk, covered in pus that smelled putrid, exactly like the odor they had noticed for weeks. The extraction was not easy. The doctors had to use a combination of tools, a medical vacuum, a special spoon, and tweezers. Elisa cried in pain during the procedure, but in the end, the object was completely removed. Still shaken, Eugenia confessed she never imagined that something like this could be happening. "I couldn't see anything inside her nose on my own. I had no idea where that sponge could have come from or when she put it in. I can imagine how much my girl must have suffered because in the last few days she didn't stop crying, and our anxiety grew to the point of taking some tranquilizers." According to the local media, Eugenia recalled that her daughter had been playing with a stuffed animal whose interior contained small sponges. After reviewing what had happened, she thought that, in a moment of carelessness, her daughter had probably torn one of those sponges and put it in her nose without anyone noticing. Over time, the sponge irritated her nasal passage and created a wound with a nest of bacteria. The incident left Eugenia with mixed feelings. Despite the final solution, she couldn't help but feel frustrated by the initial handling by the doctors. "They had been medicating my daughter with antibiotics when all they needed was to examine her more closely. If I hadn't insisted so much that they do a more thorough examination, the story would have had a very different ending. My little one, our greatest treasure, wouldn't be with us today," she commented, still visibly moved. On the other hand, Edward decided to file a formal complaint against the hospital and wanted to share his experience to alert other parents. "I want this to serve as a lesson. If you think something is wrong with your child, don't stay silent. Insist, speak up, and don't give up until you get a clear answer. Don't go home if you think something else is going on. This is a child's life, and it's not a game. A hospital spokesperson said, "We are sorry the family is not satisfied with the service provided. We will review any complaints that are made to ensure that patients receive the best possible care." Although the incident left a mark on Elisa, Eugenia and Edward were relieved that their daughter recovered. The experience served as a reminder of the importance of parents' vigilance and intuition. This story teaches us that parents' love and intuition are powerful tools in the face of uncertainty. Insisting, questioning, and advocating for our children's well-being can make the difference between a sad outcome and one full of hope. We should not be afraid to defend what we know in our hearts to be true. Our children's health and happiness deserve every effort. If you've made it this far, I thank you from the bottom of my heart for joining us. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up, share this video, and leave your comments.